records of that cell phone, you could have used your method to track where it was, correct?
If it was provided, yes.
Now, you also weren't given the phone records of Harper Williamson.
I was not.
And again, you'd agree if you had her phone records, you could have tracked her whereabouts that evening.
Using our method, we probably could have, yes.
But since we don't have her cell phone records, we don't know where Harper Williamson was that evening.
I personally don't.
Now, you also weren't given the phone records of Ignacio Sanchez.
No.
And again, if you had Ignacio Sanchez's phone records, you could have tracked his location that evening.
Sure, again, I was only asked to analyze the defendant's phone records.
And since you didn't analyze Mr. Sanchez's phone records, we don't know what time he left the winery that evening.
I wouldn't know.
We don't know if he ever went home.
I wouldn't know.
We don't know Mr. Sanchez's whereabouts at all.
Maybe not.
Your Honor, showing opposing counsel what's been pre-marked as Exhibit 32. Permission to approach the witness. Ms. Pickens, I've just placed Exhibit 32 in front of you. You recognize this, correct?
I do.
These are Mr. DuPont's phone records.
That's correct.
You reviewed them in this case.
I did.
And this is a fair and accurate representation of Mr. DuPont's cell phone records.
It is.
Your Honor, defense moves Exhibit 32 into evidence.
Any objection?
No objections, no.
Right, defense 32 is admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor. And Your Honor, I'm currently republishing what's been previously entered as Exhibit 29. Ms. Pickens, down here you can see that this is a phone number listed, correct?
I can see that.
And up here you can see that the name listed on this is Ignacio Sanchez.
Yes.
And this phone number listed is 56-12345-6789.
Yes, I see that.
Now, Your Honor, I'm going to permission to republish Exhibit 32 to the jury.
Granted.
Now, Ms. Pick is turning your attention to the call records of Mr. DuPont. And again, up here we have Mr. Sanchez's phone number listed. This phone number does not appear anywhere on these call records from June 4th to June 6th.
It is not.
That means that Mr. DuPont never called Mr. Sanchez.
I wouldn't know with certainty, but according to our data, it looks like there wasn't that call. That call was not placed,
And Mr. Sanchez never called Mr. DuPont.
according to the data.
Now, Ms. Pickens, let's talk about how you came up with your theory in this case.
Okay.
You were hired by the U.S. Attorney's Office,
I was.
and you spoke with Agent Briggs.
I did.
And Ms. Pickens, you are a scientist,
I am.
and you believe in the reliability of your method.
Yes.
And as a scientist, you think that the data should speak for itself.
To a certain degree.
Now, when you spoke with Agent Briggs, he told you his theory of the case.
Yes,
He told you what time they believe Mr. Sanchez was killed.
we did.
He told you where Mr. Sanchez's body was found.
We did.
And it was after learning this theory that you determined what the relevant phone calls were.
Not entirely. So even though he gave me his theory, it still doesn't really turn how I do my analysis. I just take the relevant information and analyze from there.
And knowing that relevant information, you focused in on 3 specific calls.
I did.
And at the time you looked at these calls, you were aware where Mr. Sanchez's body was found.
Yes.
Now, Ms. Pickens, you would agree with me that as a scientist, you shouldn't need, if the data speaks for itself, you shouldn't need to know where Mr. Sanchez's body was found.
No, but it was important to find which towers were nearest to his body so we could start analyzing the data from there. It was our starting point.
Right, it was after you knew where his body was found, you determined the relevant towers.
Yes.
Now let's talk about the conclusion that you came up with in this case.
Okay.
Your triangulation focused on 3 towers,
Yes.
but there were other towers that received signals from Mr. DuPont's phone that evening.
There were.
Tower 12 down here in Nevada
Sure.
was one of them, and Tower 49 over there in American Canyon.
Yes.
Your Honor, I'm going to republish via projector what's been entered as Exhibit 33. Now, Tower 12 in Novato is about 20 miles south of this tower up here in Sonoma.
Okay.
And that means that Mr. DuPont's cell phone was near that tower at some point that evening.
Okay.
So is that a yes to my question? His cell phone was near Tower 12 that evening?
Yes, it sends a signal to that tower.
Now I'm going to turn your attention back to this map that we looked at earlier. Down here in Shellville is where
I'm sorry,
Mr.
is that 33?
Oh, yes, my apologies, Your Honor. Down here in Shellville is where Mr. Sanchez's body was found, correct?
Correct.
And then up here, you can see this is a Motel 6 in the Weinberg area.
It appears to be, yes.
Now going back to this map that you drew earlier on direct, and we'll compare it to this map here. Weinberg is a little bit up and to the left of Shellville, correct?
Right.
So that would be roughly in this area, kind of between this green dot and the yellow tower.
About that, yeah.
So the Motel 6 is actually closer to the tower than where Mr. Sanchez's body was found.
Well, when I placed that dot on, it's just an approximation, I can't tell you for sure, but I placed it around where I believe the body was found.
And you, again, would agree that your method's not always precise.
No, but it is the most precise method, it takes into consideration factors that other methods don't, such as environmental factors, and it's the one we rely upon most.
Now, Ms. Pickus, your theory is only one explanation for the data.
One of the best explanations, I would say, yes.
There are other possible explanations,
Sure.
like the one that the FBI team came up with in this case.
Of course.
Now, the FBI team used the multiple timing band analysis method.
Right,
They came to a conclusion with that method.
that's right.
That conclusion placed Mr. DuPont in a 800 square mile radius of where Mr. Sanchez was found, correct?
Correct.
Now, the FBI team also used your triangulation method. They came to a conclusion with that method.
Yes,
That conclusion was different from your conclusion.
right.
That placed Mr. DuPont in a 250 square mile radius of where Mr. Sanchez's body was found.
That's correct.
No further questions.
Counsel on your redirect?
Yes, Your Honor. May I proceed, Your Honor?
Yes.
Now, Ms. Pickus, you were asked on cross-examination a little bit about the points of interest that you were given in this case. The fact that you were given points of interest by the FBI, did that influence your analysis whatsoever?
No.
And you were asked on cross-examination about another method, the newer method that the FBI uses. What's that method called?
I believe it's the time banding method she's referring to.
Now, based upon your knowledge as an expert in the field of cellular triangulation, is this method reliable?
Absolutely not. As I mentioned earlier, it doesn't take into consideration the environmental factors which could affect the results, the signals. And as you can tell, Sonoma is just a very mountainous terrain, and that would definitely impact the results.
Nice. You know, you said it's a very mountainous terrain between towers 29, 19, and 33. What's this area right here that could influence the triangulation?
As you can tell from the map, it's very rugged mountainous terrain, as I mentioned.
And is that why you use the method of cellular triangulation?
That, and also just because in general, there's a consensus that this is a more reliable method.
No further questions, John.
Is this witness excused?
Yes, Your Honor. May she step down?
Yes. Thank you for your time and testimony in this case. Does the government have any other evidence they would like to offer in this case in chief?
Your Honor, with that, the government rests.
Thank you. Before we turn to the defense, I understand a 5-minute break may be in order, but this is what I'm going to do. So that 5-minute break does not last into 15 or 20 minutes. Everybody look at your watch. You have 6 minutes. Thank you.